So welcome to the Challenge Cycling podcast, and delighted to have Lydia Gurley from Ep3. Lydia is a Challenge CC member and won a silver medal with her teammate Lydia Boylan at the Madison track event in the Velodrome at the European Championships, and twice bronze medalist in the World Cup. Lydia, great to have you. You're stranded over in your training camp in Mallorca. I'm sure we're all feeling very sorry for you.
Yeah, I guess like everyone else in the world, kind of stranded one place or another. But I'm in my Cycling Ireland base in Mallorca.
How long have you been over there? We've been there since before the pandemic hit.
Yeah, I've been living here on and off since 2015, but I've pretty much been here the whole time since the pandemic hit, which was just about a year ago. We had quite a severe lockdown here as well. We weren't allowed out for any kind of exercise. The only time you're allowed out was to go to the supermarket or go to the pharmacy or that. So it was quite stressful when it first hit. I'm sure just like everyone else in the world, is a bit of a shock and surreal experience.
Yeah, because most of us, you're in Mallorca, it's brilliant, but actually it wasn't so good, I suppose. A lot of times you can't train, you're also away from family. What was it like when it locked down at the start?
It was crazy. Like, I remember the day it happened. It was like March 15th, and myself and my teammates who I lived with at the time in an apartment, we were planning to go out for like one last long ride, like 5 hours. It was nice weather, planned for the day. And because we kind of expected that on the Monday something would happen, like there was all just rumors and that going around and something would happen. But so we went to bed Saturday night thinking, we'll just have one nice long ride, and then woke up Sunday morning and suddenly all these texts coming through that it's just complete and utter lockdown. You're not allowed to go outside for anything. And I just remember just sitting there and be like, well, what do I do now? I can't go out and ride my bike. That's my purpose for the next 6 months, training for the Olympics. And it was just very, very surreal. And then, it was at the time, we still hoped, I guess, that the Olympics might happen during the summer. But then as the weeks progressed, it became more and more obvious that that wasn't going to be the case. And then it was just a matter of trying to, maintain fitness. You can't just completely shut off for 12 weeks. So maintain some level of fitness with indoor trainers. And then I was lucky enough that I had access to a gym. So I was able to use the gym during that time. And I kind of felt that it was an opportunity to work on strength, nobody had any idea that it was going to be 12 weeks that we were going to be locked in, but it was an opportunity couldn't get out on the bike. So get more time in the gym and get stronger, which is an important part of track. It was just bizarre when it happened, but I'm sure it was the same for everyone else in the world, different levels of lockdowns and rules.
And so you spent a lot of time on the trainer inside the apartment.
Yeah. Myself and had two housemates at the time. We were all just sharing a watt bike and a trainer the whole time. I tried to just form like another routine. As an athlete, you enjoy, for me, myself anyways, I really enjoy routine. I just find comfort in it, I guess. So I'd wake up, have breakfast, do some training, have lunch. I was trying to learn some Spanish at the time, just something to keep the mind occupied in that, because you couldn't even go out for a walk or something like that. So it's just about forming a new routine, really, and trying to stay sane.
And it's so hard to keep focus, I imagine, especially when you're training at such an elite level. You have you had the Olympics that you're building up to, and then you realize that it's probably not going to happen this summer. How does your training change, or how does your mentality towards that change?
Yeah, I remember it was building, and it was becoming more and more obvious that the Olympics weren't going to happen. But then when they officially announced it, it hit quite hard. I'm sure it hit quite hard for all the athletes, you work and you work and you work for this. And then, this crazy event happens in the world. And, so much has happened, but, as an athlete, you can be quite, in a way, selfish, but very focused on what you're preparing for. And it's the most important thing in your existence. So that when something happens to disrupt that, despite all the craziness going on, it's your focus. And it's a real shock. It hit hard, but it was difficult because it wasn't even a thing where you could be, okay, I'll take some time off and I'll enjoy myself. It's no, you're just still like stuck in an apartment with nothing to do or nowhere to go or that. But I mean, I'm in general, I enjoy training, and even if it was just the turbo trainer, I enjoyed that it brought some structure to my day, and being able to go to the gym was a good release in that. But generally, I mean, we would change our training depending on how far away we were from competition. So I knew it was going to be a long time before there was any competition, so I could go to the gym and like feel the DOMs of gym and not be too concerned that it would affect other areas of my training. So, and then once we were finally, the lockdown was done, then it was about building some endurance again. So, we generally go through different phases of training depending on when the next competition is. So then it was about trying to build some endurance. And then it was a few more months. It wasn't until maybe the beginning of September, end of August, before we were able to get back on the track here. So then getting on the track, it was just about trying to get the legs going again and that kind of thing. So
how long before you could actually take the bike out onto the road? Because you're in Mallorca, it's looking out the window. I'm sure it's not, it's kind of tantalizing,
Yeah, it was a 12-week lockdown. And then once they finally did let us out, they had some very strange rules. So each little community, which I lived at the time in a town called Alaro, which is maybe less than 5,000 people and has an area, I don't know, maybe like 10 kilometers across each way. And we were only allowed in that area for a certain period of the day from 7 till 10 in the morning. So it's just really bizarre to be in one stage where you could like be fairly chilled in the morning during lockdown because you had nothing else to do for the rest of the day. And suddenly you were getting up at 6 a.m. to go ride a bike at 7 a.m. and then be back home at 10 a.m. and have nothing to do for the rest of the day and go on the same roads because you couldn't really venture any further. And then it was maybe another 2 weeks before 2 or 3 weeks, something like that, before we were allowed to like actually go further and not within those time constrictions. So, and I mean, it can be difficult. Yeah.
Were you able to train with your teammates as well, or were you kept kind of separate?
Yeah, no, actually the rule was you weren't allowed to train in groups at all. So you had to train like solo, but it was just so random because we were in such a like confined area. The first morning they let everyone else. It was just people walking everywhere and people cycling and just like hundreds of people. And in the main city in Palma, it was much, much worse because you had thousands of people. That it's generally quite an active country, I would say. So everyone was like going to this one climb, and you had like pelotons going up this one climb because no one else was allowed to go anywhere else. So it was very bizarre. But
must have been carnage on that climb.
Yeah, that was not in my area, so I wasn't allowed to venture there. But yeah,
are there many teams and professional athletes based close to where you are?
In other years, in December and January, you would see like a lot of the pro teams out here. And then even sometimes in the Velodrome in January, February, a lot of the teams would be aero testing in the track. So you definitely would have seen like in normal years, and then is it March? No, well, like April would usually be very busy with cyclists. And then they have the Mallorca 312 and the week of that. And the week after is just packed with cyclists. So it was just very bizarre to be here during the summer, a place that's usually packed with people. And I would cycle through towns that you wouldn't cycle through in a normal summer because it would just be so full of tourists, and they were just like ghost towns, really,
Yeah. And when you finally got back into the Velodrome, then it must have been what was it, 6 months, was it, since lockdown?
It would have been, from end of March till August, September. Yeah, it was about 6 months before I'd ridden a track bike.
And you knew at that point, did you, that the Olympics would be, well, I suppose you had almost a year of a run in then?
Yeah, I mean, so it was, I think was it in March, April, that they announced that the Olympics were going to be postponed for a year. So so in that point of view, it wasn't like, if you're not going to be competing for a few months in track, then you can focus on road training and gym, because track training is so intense. You don't, I don't spend like 5 days a week training at the track because it's just too intense. So we would generally train 2 times a week, maybe even when it was so far out from competition, just once a week at the track. Because you can't do, like, you're better off just doing volume and longer efforts on the road, really.
Yeah, it must be great though to have, teammates there with you, now training in spite of difficulties of lockdown and not being able to get home.
Yeah, I mean, for sure, like, especially if you have long hours to do, it helps to have other people to do it with and to push you as well,
Yeah.
And then when we're on the track, I enjoy training with other people on the track because it pushes you. I mean, you're always looking for that something extra to push you when it really hurts on the track, and if you're chasing someone or competing against someone in the sprint, it pushes you on.
Yeah, I think no matter what level you're at, if you're kind of Sunday morning leisure rider to being a pro athlete, like, it's having, like for somebody just going out on the Sunday, going out with a group means that you'll get out of bed in the morning. You won't kind of put the snooze button. Oh, sure, I have to turn up. And then when you're competing, like, just that extra little bit of competition you get from, racing with other people, like, it's so important, and the social element, you can't underestimate it.
Yeah, no, absolutely. I mean, like, I just remember when we were finally allowed out, I just appreciated it so much more. Actually, just being able to ride a bike and be able to ride a bike in a beautiful place, and and then once we were actually allowed to ride together, it was so nice to just ride in small groups, and yeah,
it's like calves out on new grass in the spring.
Yeah, exactly. Definitely, it was just like, yeah, it felt very good to be out and about again. But
yeah. I mean, there's been a massive increase in people cycling here. Like, I'm sure you must know. I mean, the amount of kids out on the road on bikes, it's great to see, and hopefully we'll carry that on after the pandemic. But we'll get to that anyway. But I want to find out actually, how you got into cycling, because it wasn't from an early age that you were into cycling.
No, like, it's definitely, I think it was my mid-20s before I would have ridden a bike as a kid, but like I was living in Canada at the time doing a master's, and I started doing a little bit of mountain biking first, and then I just really didn't enjoy, like, mountain biking seems to be a lot of like going up a hill for like an hour in pain and kind of like trying to spin your legs to get up, and then you're like terrified going down a hill. So it just didn't really appeal to me so much. And then
you had an experience there, which some of us will identify with here in cycling out in Connemara, where there's a lot of sheep on the road. You came across a different animal.
Yeah, I came around a turn and there was a black bear and her cub on the track, and I just like stopped in my tracks and like ran up the hill, and that was kind of the end of it for me. I'm like, I'm not
left the bike and ran, is it?
No, I like pushed the bike up the hill. I just wanted to get away. I like, luckily I spooked the bear when I was coming around. I mean, she wanted to get away as much from me as I wanted to get away from her. So
yeah, the situation you didn't want to be in, like, with a
and then I figured, you know what, I'll just stick to the roads, I think. So
yeah. I've seen some of the velodrome racing, and I tell you one thing.
Yeah.
It's no walk in the park, seeing some of the crashes. But well, anyway, sticking to Canada. So you were mountain biking in Canada and running away from bears. So where did you go from there?
So I did some triathlons when I lived there, because I lived close to a place where they'd have the Ironman triathlons and that. So I started doing that, and just for some bizarre reason really enjoyed like getting up at 5 a.m. and cycling for 6 hours on a weekend. So I built up quite a good endurance base there. And then I moved to the UK.
What kind of sports were you interested when you were younger, like, or was this a whole new lease of life for you? It was, I mean, Canada?
Yeah, I would have been like a low level of like activity, like maybe going to the gym or that, like in uni, but I played a bit of basketball and football when I was in secondary school and that. And like, actually for my size, like I'm very short. I'm like 5'2". I actually seem to do okay at basketball and play a little bit of camogie as well. So I'd always be doing different things, but not like super competitive at the time. And then when I went to university, I wasn't really part of any sports or that, but it was just when I got to Canada and I joined a triathlon club and met like like-minded people who like to do, a crazy amount of like swimming, biking, and running. And I thought that was kind of cool. So yeah,
And
but
what
then
was the thing that really kind of gave you the bug out of it? Was it the competing, or was it just being outside, or was it, some people just love to punish themselves, getting up early in the morning, getting out and really going for it?
Yeah, I love the freedom of it all. I mean, I've done some bike touring trips as well. I went from, myself and another person, we went from Canada to Mexico in 3 weeks with like camping kits and everything on the back. And
wow,
yeah, 3 weeks of maybe 100 miles a day and camped every night. And it was just so nice to every day you just go somewhere different, and it'd be a different adventure every day, and you'd meet people. And so I just really enjoy being on my bike. And track, I mean, track is different, it's very high intensity and very focused in that. But I also just, I love that competition and that like pushing yourself, because in track you have to push yourself. It's not, and I've kind of had to develop that like physically and mentally within myself, that kind of different level of pushing yourself, because it hurts a lot.
And how did you get into track cycling, coming from triathlon and more endurance cycling?
I moved to the UK to do my PhD in Birmingham, and just like with a cycling club there, I had to like one or two friends that went to the track, and I was like, oh, I think it'd be nice to go to the track. And I was also
so like they have a velodrome in Birmingham, have they?
In Newport, which is about an hour and a half away, in Newport in Wales. So I would miss days at uni, which was probably not the most professional thing to do, but I would go with a friend to go to Newport to do track. And then like I was seeing and kind of hearing and doing a bit of road racing in the UK scene, which at the time was quite competitive, and I was doing okay there. So I was wondering, was there any way to get on the Irish team, maybe in some capacity of racing. And I kind of saw that there was, that there was a women's team pursuit squad, and that was probably the best kind of way to get into any kind of professional cycling. So I got second in the Irish road race in 2015, and I think that kind of gave me the opportunity then to try out with the team in Mallorca. And the team was.
Had you done much road racing in England?
Yeah, I did a bit of road racing in England, and it was quite, like at the time I'd say it was quite competitive, and there was like a lot of races all over the place, especially during the summer and that. So I was enjoying that. But then I was, just seeing what way there was to get like onto the Irish squad in a professional way, and the track seemed to be the main thing that was kind of supported at the time.
Yeah. And I mean, because one of the things we'll get to later is the fact that you have to go abroad to train on a proper track, a proper velodrome. So, I mean, did you find that a lot of the Irish squad members were in different parts of the world, or, how did that work at the time? How did you get into the Irish squad?
Yeah, so I
How did it
mean,
all come together?
At the time they had a squad of was it four women that were trying to qualify for the Rio Olympics in the team pursuit. So they were, there's a house here that the riders can live in, and having the track here and having the facilities like gym and that to train here. So I came out in the summer of 2015 to try out for the team, and they were obviously like much better than me, but they were kind of going away to compete at World Cups and international races, but I was still just staying here and training, and then trying to compete at kind of lower level races that'd be like in Europe, like the Berlin 6-day and like 6-day races, and like we'd call them C1 races or smaller level races, just to get experience and racing in that. And then I just kind of just.
Sorry to interrupt there, but tell us a bit of the buzz of cycling in a velodrome, because we're kind of used to, out in the countryside, and there's a kind of a stadium intensity to the velodrome, isn't there?
Yeah, I mean, yeah, when you compete in maybe like in the UK or Germany or some of these places, and like some of these events, they're pretty much just parties, like the cyclists are just I don't even think most people are like paying much attention. They're just drinking and eating food and enjoying themselves, and I was fortunate enough to race in Ghent at the 166 track when Bradley and Cavendish were racing for the last time there. So that was just a giant party. But yeah, it's a buzz, like the crowd and that. But I mean, when you're racing, you don't really hear that unless something happens, like there's a crash and you hear the woo and that. But yeah, I mean, the Madison racing is very intense and very focused, and that's the race that or Team Pursuit that I would go into with the most nerves, because it is like there is an element of danger to it. You have to be very switched on. There's a lot happening, but it is a buzz when you kind of feel that you're like in the flow of it. I mean, it looks like chaos, but when you're in it, it doesn't feel as chaotic if things are flowing nicely. But it's a buzz when you.
Because it looks like a swarm of bees just going zoom, 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 and trying to keep a who's where and what's happening. It's pretty intense, and then the crashes are fairly brutal when they go down at that speed. But explain Madison for us there, if you wouldn't mind.
Yeah, so for the women, we do 120 laps, and we sprint every 10 laps for points. 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. So the top 4 gets points, and then double points at the last sprint, and 20 laps if you gain a lap. So it's two people in a team. Generally, there'll be 16 to 18 teams on a track, so it's quite packed compared to like a normal bunch race. And at one time, you have one rider that would be in the race, and then your teammate would be out of the race. And to put the person into the race, you have to do the Madison Swing to get them into the race. I mean, sometimes if there's a lot going on, you can only maybe just give your partner a push or something like that, but you have to like touch in some way to get the person into the race. But
how do you approach that tactically? I mean, how do you decide when your teammate drops in and when you drop out? How do you plan for that?
You generally try to share the load like 50-50. So you generally want to try to be in for about 2.5 laps. And then what you'll try to do as well is have the fresh rider coming in with maybe a lap and a half to go before the sprint. Because if you've been like in the race for 2.5 laps and it's the sprint, you'd generally be quite quiet. So in general, what you're trying to do is like a lap and a half before the sprint. If you're in the race, you're trying to get your partner well set up for the sprint. So that's kind of your job. Your finish line for that sprint is like 1.5 laps to go, and then you swing your partner in, and generally it's their job then to try to pick up something in the sprint if you're well positioned. But the Madison race is quite technical, and a lot of it is about positioning, because it's so fast. You don't really move as much. Generally in the sprints, where you are in the group is where you're going to finish, because you're going 60k an hour. So to go any faster is like, you would take so much power that mostly like you have to work very hard, like for 3 or 4 laps before the sprint to get well positioned for the sprint,
So you have to be kind of quite strategic in which of the intermediate sprints you go for.
Yeah. I mean, you would kind of know yourself if you're well positioned to go for a sprint. And if you're not, you would kind of just sit in, and like follow a wheel to conserve energy, and then be like, right, okay, we need to push to get this sprint. So you try to communicate with each other, but like, right, get me in a good position to go for this sprint,
Yeah. And I've seen like where you do the Madison Swing, like it's pretty dangerous part of the race, like, because you've got riders coming either side of you at 60k an hour, and you're trying to swing or cycle it forward with your hand. Like, it's mental.
Yeah. I mean, like I say, it's kind of organized chaos, because if everything's being done right, then you kind of, everyone behind a change knows a change is going to happen, because they see that like a person's teammate is coming in. So in that case, it's your responsibility to go over the change, which doesn't always happen. Sometimes that's why it can be quite dangerous. Sometimes people go with under changes, and that's quite dangerous because the rider coming out to the race is losing all the speed, and they're slowing down, and you might have a tendency to go into the track then. So Generally, when you're out of the race, you're trying to watch where your partner is. You're trying to drop in at the right speed, at the right location as well. But then you're also trying to see if other teams are doing changes at the time, and if you have to be aware of that. So the lap and a half leading up to a sprint can be very chaotic, because that's when the speed really picks up. But we practice quite a bit. The Madison Swings at the track behind the journey usually. So we try to do the changes at the speeds that we race at. So, and sometimes a bit faster as well. So we try to get as much practice in that as we can.
And how do you deal with, because I see it happening a lot, how do you deal with crashes in the velodrome? I mean, is it easier when you crash in the velodrome, or is it harder? Or how do you prepare for it?
It depends. I mean, it's funny because, I mean, you go into a race and you realize there is a potential for that, but you can't really focus on that. You have to just go into the race and know that you'll respond to a situation as best as when it happens. I mean, I've crashed in races, and your first thing that you think of is getting up and going to race again, because in the Madison, if you crash and if your partner's in the race, it can be quite dangerous, because the Madison is so quick and so intense that if you're in for more than like 2.5 laps at a time, you're going to get tired with the speed, and the potential to lose a lap there is a lot. So you want to try to get back into the race as soon as possible. But I mean, I've been fortunate, like touch wood, to not have anything too serious happen to me. I mean, you might get some splinters or get some like torn skin, or I mean, the thing I would be most concerned about is hitting your head and with concussion and broken bones and that kind of thing. But I mean, you have to go into the race and realize that you'll respond to whatever happens as best you can, and that's a risk. But I mean, when you're on the start line, there's nothing else that you can do other than than race and see what happens.
And like you say, I mean, as a professional athlete, you'd be quite focused and quite single-minded, don't you?
Yeah. I mean, I've had incidents in race where I've had like a crash happen directly in front of me and had a bike bounce in front of me, and I just like don't even think about it and just kind of continue on. I mean, yeah, you see things happen, or sometimes there'll be crashes and the race is stopped, and you'll see someone on the ground, and like it doesn't really even like compute. You kind of just like get on with it,
Yeah. And then how long you kind of professionally funded then? When did you become full-time?
Well, I spent 2015, 2016 out here, and I'm not sure if it was, 2015, 2016. I think it was probably 2017 before I got any funding. So funding is based on like getting results.
Had you finished your master's, or did you jump out of it temporarily in England?
So I was doing my PhD in the UK. Yeah. So I put that on hold, and that's still very much on hold. So yeah, at the stage where I wasn't very happy in my PhD. I really didn't enjoy it. I didn't enjoy living where I was living. So it didn't feel like that much to give up for, it was a risk in that, but I mean, I guess I thought that I could always go back to it if things didn't work out. And for me, it was worth the risk, but yeah, I think it was 2017 after getting a medal in Calais in the World Cup that I got funded. And so I think it's about 4 years now that I've been funded.
Yeah. And tell us about the World Championships then, and working your way through various competitions up to qualification for the Olympics.
Yeah, so the Olympic qualification process is over 2 seasons. So that would have been 2018, 2019, 2020. And you get points for Olympic qualification in the European champs, a certain number of World Cups, and World Champs. So the World Champs is the biggest competition of the year, and the most points are on offer. So we qualified after Berlin World Championships in March of 2020. But the situation is there's 4 riders who are eligible for consideration to race at the Olympics, because it's like with the Madison, it's like 4 riders have contributed points in competitions to qualify the team. So two people will be selected to ride, and one person will be selected as a reserve, and we're not going to know what that team is selected until probably mid-May at the earliest.
And who are the 3 teammates with you?
So my teammate Lydia Boylan, Emily Kay, and Shannon McCurley.
So Lydia, it's you're in training camp, with your teammates, but you're on the same team, but you're competing against each other for places as well, and the selection process itself is complicated.
Yeah, I mean, because we need each other. Like in a Madison, it's 2 people competing at the same time, so you need each other to get a result in the race, but then you also need like a larger team to get more results in more races. And so it's always a difficult, or like it can be a difficult dynamic in the sense that like you want to be the best, but you also have to have your teammates with you. I mean, cycling is like a team sport. Most people, like, I don't know if most people see it that way, but they can, I mean, ultimately at the end of the day, like selection is still up for grabs for the Olympics. I'm happy with what I've done beforehand, but we still have a few months to go before selection happens, and potentially there'll be races. And I've just tried to use this year to keep working and get better, because in the sense I can't control what my teammates are doing for their training. I can only control what I do and how I work. And the only thing I hope is that when selection comes, that the 2 best riders are selected, and I hope that I've worked hard enough and that I can earn that spot.
And then you've qualified 2 for the Madison and 1 then for the Omnium.
Yeah.
Now, can you explain what the Omnium is? Because it's all in one day, it seems.
Yeah, it's all in one day. And I mean, previously they would have had it all in one day. So in general, at a track race, it'd be 2 sessions. It'd be a morning and an afternoon session. And they used to divide 2 events in the morning, 2 events in the evening. But I think because of the time schedules at like broadcasting at the Olympics, they want to have it in just one session. So it's brutal, because now you have 4 short, intense races within about 2.5 hours. So in the Omnium, it's a scratch race, which is first across the line essentially wins, or if you get a lap, you're a lap up. A tempo race where you sprint for points every lap, and the first person across the line gets a point. Elimination race, which is last cross the line is eliminated. And then a points race where you accumulate points with sprints over 80 laps. So it's very intense, very quick.
Yeah. And yeah, I suppose it'd be so strategic for it.
Yeah, I mean, it's the way track racing seems to be progressing is that people are going on bigger and bigger gears. That's why like gym is quite an important part of my training now. So people are going on bigger gears, so it's getting faster and faster. So you find in the first scratch race, it'll be very quiet, and then with 4 or 5 laps to go, it just like kicks off, and everyone's going like 65k an hour, and it's just insanity. So yeah, and then the races, you don't have as much recovery between races, and if you like maybe you try in the scratch race to like get a lap and it doesn't work out, and you've expended a lot of energy for very little gain. So, and then as well in the final points race, it can be quite strategic if people are close in positions. They might just be watching another rider to stay within that. But yeah, it's a very intense few hours for those riders,
I'd say. And do you have much time then to do? Well, I know, like let's say before the lockdown, since would you have much time to compete in regular road racing?
Well, I mean, it would be ideal if you could do, like, depending on when the track season is. I mean, before the track season for us would have been October to end of February for the larger races, but now the UCI is kind of changing the season around, and you can spend like quite a bit of the summer doing smaller track races around Europe and that. But road racing is like very good training as well for track racing. I mean, there's a lot of very good track riders who compete and do very well in road races as well during the summer. So, but then it just depends about like, you know, traveling to races and that kind of thing as well. Or they sometimes hold local races here, which I can sometimes just jump into. But my focus last year was solely on going to the Olympics. So I wasn't really part of a professional team or that. And then there's, you know, so there wasn't as much opportunity obviously last year for racing.
Yeah. But you got silver in the Irish National Championships. What year was that?
2015, and then again in 2018. Yeah, it was second time the bridesmaid. But yeah, I need to work on my sprinting a bit.
Oh yeah. Plenty of time in the Velodrome.
It's improved a bit, but it still needs a bit of work. It was it would definitely be I'd be conceding, I guess, like even in endurance track racing, you know, like some riders would be seen as more endurance focus or in sprint focus. So I would definitely be the rider trying to nip off the front and get a lap if I can. So I was going to ask you there, like, I mean, you spend a lot of time in the Velodrome, and you know, the Velodrome is in Britain, in Mallorca near Ye, and you know, the Velodrome in Ireland has been talked about for a long time, and you know, we thought it was going to happen. Like, how important is having a facility like that in Ireland, with such a history of cycling in Ireland, with so much success of Irish cyclists, and with cycling so popular? Yeah, I mean, you know, like a lot of the people that compete in road racing now, you know, they started cycling on a track. Like Sam Bennett is one on the track. Brian Mullen is like very good on the track as well, and like IP events and that kind of thing, you know. So it's something that can, like, you know, lead people to that level as well. And like obviously having a track in Ireland would let people like get trained on a track earlier. I mean, you develop a lot of very good skills when you ride on the track, like cadence and racing close in a bunch and sprinting and everything like that. So you develop a lot of good skills that can be used in road racing and that. And I mean, for us, like competing at this level as well, if there was a track in Dublin, we would have greater access to the Sports Institute facilities, you know, the gym and physiology and those kind of facilities. So it can be a bit more difficult for us to get access to those. Like a lot of the times, you know, the physiologists and nutritionists and psychologists and those kind of people come out to us here for maybe like a week block every once in a while. But if we were able to train in Dublin, obviously it would be, you know, physio, these kind of facilities that we would like to use, would be able to use on a more regular basis. But in general, I think like a velodrome would be like very, very popular in Ireland. I mean, you know, on a cold winter's evening when you don't feel like going out on the road bike, being in a nice warm velodrome, and you know, you can go to a velodrome and like you can make it as hard as or as easy as you like. You know, you can just like roll around, or you can do efforts, or you can race, but you know, it's a nice, warm, safe environment at any time of the year to go train.
Well, it's like imagine if we didn't have the national track stadium in Santry. You know, it's on that equivalent. When you talk about, you know, Irish runners have got a lot of success, but equally Irish cyclists. So, you know, it would be a facility that would be very much utilized, that from little kids, you know, right up to the elite teams training. And you know, not just as a training facility like that, or a racing facility, but a way to really get the public in to see cycling and to enjoy it. And you know, people go to the continent and to Britain to experience that intensity in the velodrome. You know, it's something we're missing out on with the quality of riders we have.
No, absolutely. Like, I think, you know, it's a shame that it hasn't already happened, you know. And like obviously with all the like COVID stuff going on, I mean, there is a money investment involved in it too, but you know, I think it would be a facility that would be massively used by the people, and like something that high performance and every level, you know, could use.
Because I mean, being part of the Irish team, but having to be in Mallorca all the time, you're kind of, there's a kind of it's disjointed from the main supports, let's say, of the of your sport and of that kind of support group, you know.
Yeah, I mean, the thing is, like, Mallorca is a very, very nice place to train. But I haven't been back to Athenry in over a year with everything going on. It's a different culture, it's a different language. We live in Alaro. It's a very small town. It's very quiet. It can be a quite monkish existence. If you just eat, sleep, train, repeat. I mean, it's very easy to live that lifestyle out here. We're very much in the inland. I mean, it's not like we're not in a party area at all. It's a very, very focused training area. But yeah, it is like obviously an ideal place for training as well, but it does mean that we spend a lot of time away from home as well.
Yeah, I mean, it's huge. I mean, most people, go to Mallorca cycling for a week or maybe two if they're lucky, but it's a different thing when you're professional and you're there full time, and you can't go home. I say something hard for people to understand, because you're lucky where you are, but it's not home.
Yeah. I mean, the language is different. The culture is different. I mean, the culture, and during the summer, I mean, training here in August when it's 40 degrees it's pretty unpleasant. And the apartments are 40 degrees all the time and you're just warm all the time. But yeah, I mean, it is an ideal location. I think it is one of the best places in the world for cycling, really. I can understand living here why so many people come here to cycle. The road surface is nice and there's mountains or hills, and we're very fortunate to be training here, and I feel like very fortunate to have spent the last year preparing here as well. Is like, I know a lot of other nations have had problems getting access to velodromes, to like their training facilities and like training on the road. I mean, a lot of times the British team they would come to like warmer climes during the winter to get the winter training, and they obviously can't do that now. So like, I've been quite fortunate to be able to train here.
And what's the plan from now till the Olympics? I mean, will you be there in Mallorca full time, or is there, will you get back home, or is it very much still up in the air?
I think most likely I'll be here until the Olympics. It's not, I mean, it's not easy, or it's not pleasant, I think, to travel at the moment. There's so many restrictions and having to do tests and travel restrictions and that. And it's just, at the moment, I just find it stressful to travel anywhere. And if it's not necessary, it's not necessary for me to travel. So I'm most likely just going to stay here. And we potentially have competitions coming up, but again, they're all up in the air about whether they're actually going to happen or not. So if there's no competition, I most likely will just stay here. Yeah,
I'd say your kind of teammates, become family. Like, you spend so much time around each other.
Yeah, I mean, I lived the majority of my time in Alaro, and a lot of the time the teammates and that. But in the last few months, I've moved into Palma. It's a little bit closer to the track and just a little bit of a separation as well, because it's good to live with people you train with, but then it's also nice. You just come home at the end of the day, and then there's no more talk of cycling. It's healthy, I think, to have a separation between like what you do and who you are, and kind of try to separate it. Because I mean, especially with everything that's been happening this year, if cycling and the Olympics is your sole focus, and if that is like taken away from you, and if it's all you think about or all you do, then it's not healthy. That's not a healthy way to be, I think. So you need to have a little bit of balance, I think.
So what do you do then to get that headspace, or to get that distraction, away from the bike, away from cycling?
Yeah, I mean, I have to be like, I can't be like doing anything terribly exciting, and especially like at the moment, there's, most everything is closed most of the time, but it's just nice. I like to try to get out into the hills, just a bit of hiking if I can, or get to the beaches, or just like Palma's a nice city to just have a walk around, or go for a coffee or that kind of thing, and just just to get a bit of separation from it, really.
Yeah, and you're using the time to learn Spanish.
A little bit, yeah. It's definitely helpful to have a little bit here. It took me. I mean, I really didn't make that much of an effort until the lockdown. And then it was just like, well, I have like an extra 10 hours in the day. I have nothing else to do. So I might as well try to learn a little bit of Spanish.
Yeah. And do you miss cycling back home now, out in Athenry in the rain and the potholes?
Well, I mean, it's nice. It's not. I mean, I like training at home because I train and then I can like spend time with my family and that kind of thing.
Yeah.
I enjoy that. That part of it. And like my brother lives up in Dublin, so I've been training a little bit in Wicklow, or like around Wicklow and Dublin and that as well. So, it's just nice to get out on the roads around Galway and Athenry as well. I've done a little bit around Connemara and that, and just like the quietness and the kind of like, even like the wind and that. I mean, if you get a nice day, there's nowhere else nicer in the world to cycle than Ireland. It's just not as often as here.
Yeah, yeah. And like there's been such interest in cycling. I mean, with the lockdown, kind of naturally, people have taken to cycling.
Yeah.
And luckily as well, there seems to be, a lot of moves on the part of the government putting money into greenways, into different cycling infrastructure. But we're kind of coming from a slow start. On the kind of club level and the kind of leisure rider level, I mean, what do you think? Like, how important do you think it is that we're kind of encouraging cycling that from all levels?
Yeah, I think it's massive because like one of the best parts about cycling is meeting people at a cafe, maybe having a coffee beforehand, going for a bike ride, and then coming back and like just chatting and having a coffee. And I always find that like when you're in a group ride with people, it's so easy to just have like a conversation, and it just flows more than if you're just even just like sat across from someone having a conversation. It just, for whatever reason, I think it just like cycling, if you're not going too intense, it can just like calm you. And if you're working within the group, you get to talk to different people and that, and like to feel part of something, to feel part of a club, and to feel that there's people that enjoy doing what you do as well. I mean, that's what I really enjoy about being at the club. I mean, like if you speak to most people, it's silly to cycle 90 kilometers. It's like, why would you do that? But I mean, you cycle with a club of people, and that's just their normal, and it's what they enjoy. And it's nice to be around that kind of energy where people just don't think you're silly because you ride a bike for that.
Yeah. And has all this time, in between lockdown and just being a cycling and training full time, has it given you space to kind of think, to the future? Because you were doing your PhD, and then you took that opportunity when it came, to go cycling, training, competing full time, which is, you would have regretted it if you didn't take that opportunity. So many people would give their eye teeth to do it. Has it changed how you see, life after cycling?
I think like it's given me, because I've spent most of my life like working in the university, which is one type of environment, and like being in this environment has taught me so much more about like how to work with people. It's taught me much more about myself and resilience and striving and working for your goals. It's like, and I mean, in terms of like what I want to do afterwards, I'm quite content to give myself just a bit of time afterwards. I'm not too keen to rush into the next thing, because I think, if you work for something, and if like I hope to achieve competing at the Olympic Games, and I find that like if you can show yourself that you can commit to something and work, then then you feel that there's more opportunities, and you learn how to like communicate with yourself better and not to put yourself down, and like how important like mental strength is, and how important positive talk is, and all these kind of areas. And if you believe that you can do something and work towards it, that's a massively positive thing that I've gotten from this experience. So yeah, I'm not 100% sure what I'm going to do after this, but I'm quite content to give it a bit of time, because mostly in my life it's always just been one thing after the other. So, and I just want to give a bit of time to see what happens. And because I mean, realistically, I think like life choices and life decisions will be different whether one, the Olympics happens, two, whether I get selected to race, and then depending on how that goes. So I just want to see what happens, and then just take it as it comes.
And would you have any advice for young women, looking to get into cycling, getting into racing, because in Ireland, cycling would be very kind of male dominated. we'd have in the club in Challenge and around Connacht, would be a lot of the races would be mostly fellas, and trying to encourage more women to do the races, and that is growing and that's being encouraged. Would you have any advice?
Yeah, I think the main thing is like to try not to be intimidated. I mean, everyone trains and everyone races to get better. Like no one rocks up at a race and wins everything, or and it's about what do you want to get from the racing. I mean, do you want to win every race, or do you just want to enjoy the experience of like meeting new people that are like-minded? And I think it's been, what do you want to get out of that experience, and don't be intimidated by other people that you think are better than you, because everyone started from somewhere. I mean, I was like in a local club and like had none of the gear and no idea, and like that's where most people start, and there's nothing wrong with starting at that level, and there's nothing wrong with just enjoying it as well. It doesn't have to be super competitive, but if that's something you enjoy, then like go for it and give it 100% and just enjoy it. I think the most important thing is to enjoy it and not be intimidated, and appreciate the opportunity to meet like-minded people, and just enjoy riding your bike.
I think it's a great time for cycling. I mean, I think if we don't make the most of this opportunity that this terrible pandemic has given us, with people getting into exercise outdoors and cycling and walking and everything, if we don't make the most of a bad situation, it'd be an awful shame.
Yeah, I think cycling can give you so much like happiness as well. I think like in the situation that everyone's in now, if you're just stuck indoors and feel that you can't do anything, it's not healthy. I mean, I think it's so healthy to get outside, to physically, exert yourself a little bit, and just get out of your head a little bit if possible, and just, if you can, meet up with other people, but just to get some fresh air. It's such a healthy thing, and like cycling can be competitive, but it can also just be something that you do for happiness as well.
Absolutely, yeah. And with all the time you have when you come home, are you following the women's and men's professional racing, road racing, or is it like you get home because I don't even look at another bike?
No, I definitely enjoy. Sorry, 1 second here.
No worries.
Sorry.
There you go.
I definitely enjoy watching like the racing as well. I mean, the Milan San Remo, where they're cycling for 6 hours. I mean, I think that day I like got up, ate breakfast, traveled to the gym, came home, and like watched the result. It's like crazy that they like cycle that amount. You kind of just go on with your day and like check in on it every once in a while and see what's happening, and then so I enjoy watching it, because I mean, it's incredible what they do. I think a lot of times when I say I'm a cyclist, people think that I like cycle the Tour de France, and the way I try to explain it is like in terms of a runner, like those people that cycle the Tour de France and those longer distance or marathon runners, versus I would consider myself like a 5,000 meter runner. So, like the training that I do, my physique, like all these things would be different compared to what they do, but I enjoy watching that in the cyclocross, and like I always really enjoy watching track racing. I think like that's another thing that's such a shame that we don't have a track. It's so cool watching track racing. I mean, it's so different compared to what you see on the TV, compared to like what you see live. I mean, how close people get, the speeds they go. It's so fast packed racing, and there's always different races: sprint races, endurance races, men's races, women's races, rather than just 6 hours of a road race. So I think track racing would be my favorite event to watch, really.
It's a fantastic spectator sport. I suppose the closest I came to it was we went to do the Flanders, before the actual men and women's race comes through. So you do like a sport deep the day before, and then the next day you go to one of the cobbles. We were at the Hoppenburger one of them, and it's a big party, like, and they come around 3 or 4 times, both races, the men's and women's, and there's just people out there drinking beer. The weather is cold. It's kind of like Patrick's Day, but there's such crack, and it really brings you really close to the riders and to the action. And that's really something we're missing, without a velodrome. And
Yeah.
let's hope, in a few years' time, we'll be able to go and see you and, the Irish teams in velodromes and,
Yeah.
competing in velodromes. Because, I mean, I would imagine, and I know very little about velodrome racing, that if we did have one in Ireland, we'd have our clubs like Challenge or Galway Bay or any other clubs around, competing in the velodrome too, would provide just another level, another avenue for a cyclist.
No, for sure. I mean, even we have Sundrive up in Dublin, and there's a lot of clubs that have specific track teams, and I think it's it's so much fun, really, racing in Sundrive, seeing people that I haven't seen in a long time, and seeing and just, I mean, on a nice day, it's really nice to race outside in the track, on a summer's day. It's a really pleasant experience just being outside.
Is it
racing
a wooden track, is it, or is it like a tarmac job? Or
yeah, it's cement. It's was it 459 meters, so it's a good bit bigger than an indoor track, and there wouldn't be as much of a slope on it. But we do there's international races held, or one held every summer in good times, and riders come from all over the world to compete there. It's kind of a shame it's not when things are better, that it's not promoted or seen as much as it could be. But so I enjoy it whenever possible, racing in Sundrive. But yeah, and clubs do travel from everywhere, so I can well imagine if there's an indoor track, and if you can go there and the racing will go ahead, and national champs and everything will go ahead. It'd be really cool for people to do.
It would be class. Lydia, it's been a real pleasure talking to you.
Yeah, no, it's been fun.
Thanks a million for sharing your experience, and we can't wait for the Olympics. It's kind of a long run up to it, but it'll be worth it. Yeah, I mean, I think January, February here was a bit of a slog, but finally it seems like there might be a little bit of hope, and finally feel like I'm building up a bit more to it. So yeah, hopefully everything goes well, and I compete there. It'd be amazing. We'll be all shouting from you, everyone from Athenry in Ireland and Challenge. Yeah, I really appreciate you joining us. Yeah, no, thanks very much. It's been cool. Thanks a million, Lydia. All the best. Okay, bye-bye.